2.
Give me a count.
She get just a little more in hers. Say something.
Give me a count.
30.
Saturday morning town hall, coming to you live from Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push Coalition. This is the acting national executive director, Bishop Thomas Grant. Go to www.rainbowpush.org or text the word PUSH to 41444. We are keeping hope alive. Somebody make some noise. Somebody make some noise. We're blessed in the city. Receive the sounds of freedom.
Everybody sing bless, 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 bless. Sing bless, bless. Come on, everybody, wherever you are. Everybody sing bless, 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 bless. Come on, let's sing it all together. Everybody sing, we're blessed. We're blessed in the city. We're blessed in the field. We're blessed when we come and when we go. We cast down every stronghold. Sickness and poverty must cease, for the devil is defeated. We are blessed. We're blessed in the city. We're blessed in the field. We're blessed when we come and when we go. We cast down every stronghold. Sickness and poverty must be, but the devil is defeated. We are blessed. Late in the midnight hour, God's gonna turn it around. It's gonna work in your favor. Anybody believe it this morning? Say, late in the midnight hour, God's gonna turn it around and around and around and around and around. Say, late in the midnight hour, God's gonna turn it around. It's gonna work in your favor. Anybody believe it this morning? Say, late in the midnight hour, God's gonna turn it around and around and around and around. Everybody say, we're blessed in the city. We're blessed in the field. We're blessed when we come and when we go. We cast down every stronghold. Sickness and poverty must cease, for the devil is defeated. We are blessed.
Give God a hand praise. This is the Rainbow Push Coalition Saturday morning town hall. You can go to www.rainbowpush.org to get more information about everything that we are doing, and we're excited about the work of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Make some noise for Reverend Jackson. You know, we have in our prayers our national staff, our board members, and our national body of members that are all literally not just here in the United States, but around the world. We have a delegation in Nigeria, Africa, for the inauguration of the new president of Nigeria. Let's put our hands together for the new president of Nigeria. Of course, we're praying for the one and only John Mitchell. Make some noise for John Mitchell. We are praying for John Mitchell and his family as he's laying his father to rest this week at the Holy Comforter Saint Cyprian Church in Washington, D.C. this week. If you want to show John some love, go to www.rainbowpush.org. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. The incomparable Tina Turner. Let's give it up for Tina Turner. Wow. We're talking about 20 million copies worldwide, 3 Grammys, and a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We will never forget Tina Turner. Make some noise for Tina Turner. Reverend Jackson this week has been in contact with the family of Adrian Murray, the 11-year-old that was shot in the chest by an Indianola police officer responding to a 911 call. And we're thankful that little Adrian is still alive and recovering. But we want full investigation of this matter because it's so important to hold people accountable as it relates to serving and protecting. As Reverend Jackson has said it over and over again, we want police patrol and not police control. And this is a blaring example of how something can go awry and lives can be taken when there's not the appropriate steps followed through in procedure and protocol. And so we were looking for that to be investigated to the fullest. And then, you know, the hits just keep on coming in Florida. A Florida school, elementary school, has sought to ban Amanda Gorman's poem, "The Hills We Climb," that was read at Joe Biden's presidential inauguration. One single challenging parent went to the school board because they believed that the poem referenced race theory and had hate messages in it and gender ideology. One parent went in and had this poem blocked from this school district. Well, guess what? We're going to fight for it to get back on the book and get back on the shelf. And starting next Saturday, as a part of our Push Excel oratorical initiative, we're going to have a young person reciting that poem every Saturday all the way up to our international convention, because the hills we climb tell our story, tell our testimony, and show how we've survived the test of time. And those of you who want to support Amanda Gorman, go on Amazon and buy the book, buy the poem, and let's keep her in front of our young people. What an amazing poet and an amazing poem. Give it up for Amanda Gorman. This is Memorial Day weekend, and we're excited about the celebrations and the parades and the honor that we're giving to our servicemen and women who have given their lives, their blood, sweat, and tears for our country, particularly black and brown veterans. And we'll be talking about them with some very special guests. I want you to listen. This is our convention year. Give it up for the annual 56th International Convention right here in Chicago on the campus of the University of Chicago at the Rubenstein Forum, July 15th through the 19th. Now, it's so important that you volunteer. It's so important. The registration is only $35, only $35. I don't know how many conferences and conventions you can go to with the kind of information and impact, the engagement that we have, that you can go for $35, but you're going to be able to do it here in Chicago, July 15th through the 19th, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. I'm talking about the 84-88 campaign reunion that will be kicking off on the 15th, an amazing display of work and leadership and legacy of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson running for president. And when we outline for you his impact, not just on the Democratic Party, but on the democracy as a whole, You're going to be absolutely amazed at the persons who are going to come and present. That Sunday is the Dr. Clay Evans Gospel Concert in Apostolic Church of Chicago. Thank God for Apostolic Church of Chicago. Put your hands together. We'll be honoring and remembering the amazing music ministry of Father Hayes and the Cosmopolitan Church of Chicago. We've got amazing guests that are going to be coming to us. Monday is our Education International Day, our sports day. We've got delegations coming from the African diaspora, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. Is going to be absolutely phenomenal, and our Push Excel Gala is going to close out that Monday. Tuesday is business, faith leaders, and labor. I'm telling you, you're going to really be amazed at the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson, from Silicon Valley to Wall Street to Peachtree and to London, as those delegations are going to come and display for us the amazing work of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And as always, we will climax our international convention with our International Women's Luncheon on that Wednesday. Now, go to www.rainbowpush.org right now, and you can register. You can also make your hotel reservations. You can volunteer. If you're a business, you can participate in one of our incredible sponsorship opportunities, and you can make a contribution. This is the year we're going to make a difference. Give it up for the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson. I want you to receive the sounds of freedom. We've got some amazing guests. I want you to go to your social network right quick, like, share, comment, and connect with us right now on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Let's receive the sounds of freedom.
Makes me appreciate the good times. Grateful. Grateful. 'cause there's someone else who loves to be in your shoes. Be grateful, be grateful.
Just keep your head up and never look down. Be grateful.
Be grateful.
Because God is always there. He's always around. Be
Well, give it up for the sounds of freedom. This is the Rainbow Push Saturday morning town hall brought to you from Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and we thank you for watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as listening on AM 1690 WVON. We have the one and only Congressman Jonathan Luther Jackson, 1st Congressional District of Chicago. Give it up for, give it up for Congressman Jackson.
Thank you, Bishop Grant. It's an honor to represent you in Washington, D.C., and it's so great to be back home. First of all, happy Memorial Day to all of our veterans, the African Americans that started this noble tradition in Charleston, South Carolina. Let us never forget it was African American veterans that had fought in the Civil War. Americans, I don't like to use the term slaves. I don't know what a slave is. These were Americans that had been enslaved in their own country. We fought in every war. And they said that after the war was over, they did a mass grave at a horse track and buried all of these soldiers in unmarked graves. And it was the duty of those remaining soldiers to take those bodies out and to properly give them a burial. And from there, they had a procession where thousands of people went to the gravesite to honorably give these persons their remains the decorum and the dignity that they deserved. And out of that, there became an annual tradition that we would remember our veterans on Memorial Day. That is another part of African American history that everyone should know. And if someone is in Florida right now, they should tell the governor, you should open the book, not close books. You should read the book, not continue to ban books. History does not repeat itself. People repeat history. People that don't know the history are certain bound to repeat it again. Update, come June 10th, I will give you more information this week. If you could go to our campaign site, Jonathan Jackson for Congress. The Congressional Black Caucus is coming to Chicago on June 10th, part of Freedom Summer. I want us to show up, show out. Let's show them that we understand what Freedom Summer is, that we're going to bring our children and grandchildren and grandmothers out. Anyone that's heard of it knows about it. Right now, there is a gap, and I don't want to fix the blame. I want to fix the problem. I'm not going to be focused on what they haven't learned in school. It's our obligation to teach our own at home, at school, at Rainbow Push, in your civics room, at your church. We have to have a recommitment to teaching our children about our civics. They simply don't understand. So June 10th, I will give you more information out on that. Please make sure you sign up onto a contact list. If you're here today, or go to the Rainbow Push website, I will blast out some information for you. And the last part is on the debt ceiling. This thing goes on and on and on. Sometimes you have to be careful for what you wish for. Sometimes you can get what you want and not want what you got. This is the deal that was cut in January when we were in Washington, D.C. being sworn in. There was a group that Speaker McCarthy was trying to control and influence in order for him to receive his speakership. And in those back rooms, in those beautiful buildings, deals were cut and agreements were made. Part of that was for what are we going to do with the debt? We currently have $31.4 trillion of a debt ceiling. The debt ceiling came into effect in 1917, where Congress would get together and see how much money the federal government could pass. Since 2001, our economy has been accumulating debt on average of over $1 trillion a year. How does that happen? That means we simply are living beyond our means. We are having to borrow money because we don't have enough taxation to cover all of our bills. Hey, Dad. So we simply have been borrowing. How does that happen? Well, first of all, it happens under the George Bush administration. What happened under George W. Bush administration? We went into Afghanistan, we went back into Iraq, we went to war without raising taxes. You always raise taxes when you go to war. We started off on a tax cut going into a war. That's in the beginning of this structural federal budget deficit that is creating this debt to continue to escalate. Then under the Trump administration, when we're going into COVID, what's the first thing he does? He has a tax cut. And then something unbeknownst to him and unexpected to most of the world, the COVID shutdown of the world's economy. And so 25% of all the debt that's been accumulated in American history happened under President Trump's watch. And there's no conversation today about reversing, talk about make taxes pay again. No, he wants to make America great again. No, make those with taxes pay again. And that will go a long way towards removing this structural impediment. And the last part I want to share on the, I don't want you to have any anxiety. I am highly confident this is going to work out. We've had people calling the congressional office, senior citizens, alarmed and scared. They're hearing all the catastrophic things that can happen if this is not resolved. All of that is true. In short, if we default, the interest rates will go up, our borrowing costs on homes, apartments, cars, and everything else will go up. Consumer spending will come down, it will trigger recession, and therefore you'll have massive layoffs. That's a fact. But the good news is, these are approximates on June 1st was not the due date, doomsday. That's the reason I never quoted it, never said it, because there's a little bit of money that's still in the Treasury, and then by June 15th, federal tax returns come in, for quarterly returns come in where corporations pay. That puts more money in the Treasury. Then by the end of June, you start going into extraordinary measures where the Treasury can do other things, such as delay on paying into Social Security. So don't panic, don't fret, don't get nervous about that. But they will resolve this. Now, I will tell you in closing, there has been talk about work requirements for the poor, and there's been talk about cutting a food stamp and food assistance for the poor. Did you ever hear of work requirements for the bankers that got us into this problem? Did you ever hear of work requirements for those that receive enormous tax breaks? Have you ever heard of work requirements for those that are receiving subsidies in oil and gas and energy and electric? Have you ever heard of work requirements? And the fact of the matter is, those persons that are receiving supplemental nutritional assistance already have work requirements. Someone needs to understand that people that have supplemental nutritional assistance, people that are making less than $30,000 a year for a family of three, we're talking about $15 an hour. We're talking about people that are making $82 a day. We're talking about should they get a government benefit of $2 to $3 a day. This is what this is all. The maximum is $6 a day. So America has the capacity to feed our families. And so I want to say, stay encouraged. Keep in mind, June 10th, Saturday, there's going to be the Congressional Black Caucus is coming to Chicago for Freedom Summer. And I would like to ask all of you to come out to participate. Let's get our friends and families out, and let's reinvigorate our movement for our own interests so we can see freedom in our lifetime. Thank you, Bishop. Love you, Dad.
One more time for Congressman Jonathan Jackson, 1st Congressional District of Chicago. Reverend Jesse Jackson is here. Let's make some noise for our founder and our president. Come on, make some, no, come on. I'll wait on you. Let's give it up for Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Thanks to you, Bishop Grant, for doing such a tremendous job. We can for Bishop Grant, shall we? Our wisdom pool, led by Jonathan Jackson, Congressman Jackson, you keep on doing it, boy. Proud of you. Let me say to you, that Johnny, I want you to respond to it. Your little secret is that this is a war of the Civil War nature. Fight between the South and the North, between Confederates and Union people. The Confederates believed that we should maintain slavery, secession, segregation, sedition, or white male supremacy. Lincoln believed in a more perfect union. It's the soul of America. There's a war going on. When Congresswoman Green suggests that maybe the South is paying too much taxes, 30% of their budget comes from the federal government. They don't mind the debt crisis. They want a weak central government and strong states. They want a weak central government and strong states. The federal government imposed upon them public accommodation in 1964. The present-day Democrats, or the present-day Republicans were Democrats. Trump Turner was a Democrat. Wallace was a Democrat. Bull Connor was a Democrat. When we got the right to use the toilet, use the library, they left en masse. They became the new Republican Party, following Goldwater. We chose Johnson. Johnson supported public accommodations, right to vote. Y'all with me so far? So what happened was that they on a race basis solely, en masse, they changed parties, they changed ideas, still believe in segregation, still believe in race superiority, the whole 9 yards. So that the issue is now, they don't mind having a budget bust. They want a weak federal government. It's a weak federal government. If it's weak, it cannot impose. In the South, they talk about it. If it were not federal government, they couldn't have interstate highways there. Couldn't have hospital care, education, health care. I was born, my mama, I mean, at home because it was hospital care. I was born on midwives, right? Told me somebody. Now, Jackie Robinson, 1941, football, basketball, baseball, track, 4 Letterman. Then went to the Army. Went to the Army, and guess what? They wanted him to sit on the back of the bus, and he was an officer. He refused to go to the back of the bus in 1941. He was court-martial. Jack Robinson sat in before Rose Parks sat in. 41, 55, right? The one thing about Dr. King, about Jack Robinson, right? He broke it all up. You would not have today blacks in Major League Baseball, football, or basketball. He broke in 47. The deal he cut with Branch Ricker was he would not protest any violation of him, Republicans or Democrats, by black or white press. He had with him a black press guy traveled with him all the time. And he said he traveled with him because he couldn't sit in the press box either. Jackie Robinson, many guys, first base, they on his ankles rather than step on the base. He was hit more time the first year than the entire league was hit the year before. On his head without a helmet on. He had the bunt. His first hit was a bunt. Went 49 times, advanced the white runner. On base 29 times out of 48 times. He became Rookie of the Year. The white people decided what they would do is that they would rather than play with him, on the field they let him go by himself, boycott. I want to stop that scheme. Then Jackie Robinson Did so doggone well, he became Rookie of the Year. 361 against those odds. He suddenly sacrificed his way into greatness. And one day he had 4 for 5, a couple bases he stole, and Dodgers won 5-4. Dixie Walker, Dixie, as in Dixie Walker, said, you had a good game there, boy, but you still a nigga. He couldn't even protest it because he made a commit deal. For 3 years, he up on protest. Only Rachel, his wife, as a nurse, nursed his wounds at night. So we've come through now. So when a guy making multi-million-dollar a year playing basketball, he got to flash his pistol. Silly, ain't it? Talk to me, somebody. Then in the next year, I used to play football in NFL. They Bob Black's 1932, George Hallis, Rooney from Pittsburgh, and Myers, New York. Bob Black played in the NFL for 16 years. Jackie's success made it possible. A few years later, the NBA opened up for blacks. And so we didn't just play basketball because we just learned how to play it. And Abe Samuelson was so brilliant. The NFL, Jim Brown, bless his soul, made that a great team, a great league. He ran through lines. He did all that stuff. And so when black played basketball, white women would see black men's legs. Cheap argument they used at that time. So when they began to play, 2 blacks on every team. Golden State was the first team to have 5 blacks on the court at one time. Y'all hear me now? So we've come to some mess. It keeps on coming back. In the war, blacks on the volunteers as airmen, Tuskegee Airmen. Tuskegee Airmen, the only blacks, whites were pulling for the white Germans over black American soldiers. White Americans were pulling for white Germans, Americans with the same color uniform. It's like Jackie on the plate, pulling for Jackie to lose, and the other team could win. You get home run, you come back, people shake your hands. They would not take a shower with Jack Robinson. They thought his skin might make them dark. He went through some mess here, I'm telling you that. So this debt limit thing is deep. It's deep as it's a Civil War issue. Civil War issue. Now, if I know this information, white people wrote it down. Nobody too. Now, why is DeSantis, for example, whole kick about he doesn't want black kids taught in school? Because white children, the grandchildren of these rascals, mama, daddy, granddaddy, he's a great guy. Did he march with Dr. King? Did he go to march on Washington? Was he in the Klan? They're not discussing what their granddaddy did. Creating trouble, y'all follow me now? So it becomes an issue in white households. Their granddad was a racist. Wrong side of history. That's what it's all about. So he has read polls would say, teach black history because you got to teach about where your daddy was. The guy got 18 years the other night. The one-eyed guy, he's a graduate from Yale Law School. He's super just ignorant. He's not stupid. It's high calculation. I'm mad about myself today. That deal is about the bust the central government. They don't mind busting central government. They'll say be rich, however the government we have. So I want you to stop and fight back. Jonathan, talk about it.
As it relates to the Civil War, you can recall that one of the major issues there was the taxation after the war. who will pay to rebuild the country? So the federal government had to impose a taxation. This is at the heart, the genesis of wanting to have states' rights. Keep the federal government out. And if you want to validate this and go over the timeline, all of our benefits, all of our gains have come from the federal government, not by way of states' rights. When we talk about the troops being sent into the South to break up the slaveocracy, we needed federal intervention to send in the troops with General Sheridan, with General Sherman, with all of the Union soldiers to come down and represent us. When they pulled back the Great Compromise, what was that about? Taking federal protection, taking federal troops out of the South. When we talk about gaining the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment, no state was voluntarily getting rid of slavery. Vermont was the first. But in order to make it nationwide, that was federal legislation for the 13th Amendment to no longer have slavery unless duly convicted. They slid that one in there, meaning that if you have been convicted, you are not a citizen. What does that mean in real terms? If you have a twin that has been incarcerated and they can give you a kidney or something to stay alive, they cannot, because you are DOC, Department of Corrections property. You cannot even give your organs to your own loved ones. When we talk about the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, it all goes in harmony, just like a chord. The 15th Amendment, when we talk about the right to vote, when you're not represented, you don't have the right to vote. Therefore, you go backtrack on the 14th Amendment. You have less equal protection under the law because you cannot be protected. Now you're back into the 13th, which is a derivative of the 15th. You are now teetering on slavery again. And that's how all three of those go. When we talk about going fast forward to where we are today on this debt, it's a basket of goods. Women's right to choose. That's not simply about abortion. That's the cultural war, the inflammatory language. Women that have complications from pregnancies. Men do not have complications from pregnancies. You cannot have a complication from pregnancy, gentlemen. It's not physically, anatomically possible to have a physical, never mind. Going forward, there are women now that have been given diagnosis that their child will not live, or that have found out in the first 6 weeks of the term of their pregnancy that they have cancer, and therefore they have to make a life or death decision to start chemotherapy now and can no longer carry this baby to term healthily, inducing it with the radioactive radio treatment. And people are saying there are 6 weeks abortion bans. And there's so much more. It has to deal with women and maternal health. It's not about abortion. This is an issue for husbands, for fathers, for brothers, for sons. It has to deal with family health. Not about eradicating a fetus that's unwanted. Now when we start talking about not just women's health, but banning books. Now we started talking about denying people the right to vote. Now we started talking about eliminating student debt on who can have an opportunity to have an American investment in their education. Now we started talking about sovereign territory. Which countries the United States is going to come to the borders and defend them for their freedom? It's all one basket of goods. So people are trying to sit back and say, pick and choose issues. Even on the migrant issue, it's about humanity and compassion. Where those persons will end up staying, that is something to be resolved later on. But if you have a television like me, I see women with a child on their back. I see men without shoes. I see families that are struggling. The first thing that comes to my mind is not why are they here, it's how can I help? The second thing is, where did they come from that was so bad? We need to go down there and help them fix it. These people do not want to be here. Be clear, they've had to come out of hell to get here. In closing, let me ask you, would you leave from this room or from television land right now Go to another country with just a shirt on your back, empty out your pocket with your child to go find a police station where you can go sleep on the floor. That tells you they have come from some of the worst conditions unimaginable on earth. And I want us to continue to show humanity and compassion towards those persons. They cannot help the circumstances. Their countries have been drug run. They have had coups. They've been overturned. They've been the victims of climate change. They've been also the victims of corporate greed that have exposed them. So ladies and gentlemen, we can be compassionate and we can also obey the law. Our communities have done the most for the longest. I want us to continue that spirit, but we're not going to be set at the back of everything that's good. And when things are good, we need to feel it. Stop giving us all the problems and never any of the opportunities. I told you 13 years ago in 2013, when they closed these 51 elementary schools, nothing good could come out of that. And as a consequence, nothing good has come out of it. Every neighborhood that had a school closing, the properties have continued to go down. And now the grocery stores have closed. Now the pharmacies have closed. Now the population has continued to be depleted. We have to have an economic renaissance to fill in these vacant lands. And ladies and gentlemen, in closing, 261,000 African Americans have left Chicago in the first 2 decades of the new millennium. This is a strategic question that we have to ask and have to answer. If we're moving out, then who should move in? You cannot have these lots vacant forever. Now, either we continue to grow and populate them ourselves, we ask some of our friends and families to move back, or you're going to have to make room for migrants and immigrants to move in. That's the nature of life. We have built an infrastructure in this city of Chicago that peaked with 3.6 million people in the 1950s. Now we're teetering under 2.6 million people. Get the picture. And if we don't get this crime and violence and lack of education under control, we're going to go further down quickly. People that want to go to the beach don't need to be shot at. You can't have blocks and quadrants of the city where murders are being relished and praised and uplifted. I yield my time back to the great Honorable Bishop Graham.
One more time for Congressman Jonathan Jackson. Somebody say, keep hope alive. Said, keep hope alive. Said, keep hope alive. You know, the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson is so very critical, and this is the reason why every Saturday we're here at Dr. King's workshop giving you information, engagement, and affording you the opportunity to be a part of an encounter that uplifts and elevates your opportunity to make this a more perfect union. This is a tireless, budgetless effort, and we need your support. And what I want you to do now on your table, and there's a QR code on the screen, you can give right now. Text the word PUSH to 41444 and give right now. Reverend Jackson?
Mom to make a baby. So that we should share the pain. Men who have babies don't want to raise them should get vasectomies. Be neutralized. You cannot keep on having babies, dropping joy, and then one has to endure pain or die. You ever got it down? Men who make babies don't want to raise them should have vasectomies. Be neutralized. That makes sense, y'all? We share some pain here. Now, second piece of this thing is that on this Civil War business, Americans wouldn't have died to take us back, but we wouldn't have died to go forward. To die to go forward. Not backwards. Forward, not backwards. There's a sense today we've lost that urgency. Sense of and the whole coming up, different spirit there is and on the top coming back down. That people, I'm not a member of the Civil Rights Organization. Everything you got came from the Civil Rights Movement, everything you got. Whether from here to Memphis, now Women have to get the car, and we leave the bodies behind trees. Men, the same thing. You go to the service station, you couldn't color in the rear, white women only, men only. Y'all hear me? So we're fighting the real fight. So I urge you today, join the movement. We have a convention coming up in July 15th to the 19th. Those who were involved in the 84, 88 campaigns, please come be a part of the reunion right now. Now, let me say about the 84, 88 campaign. I took it on, it was like a uphill battle. Well, they asked, in New Hampshire, they said, Reverend, so you've done pretty well so far. We have a foreign policy debate tomorrow night. You want to miss that? I said, I don't mind discussing foreign policy. I said, we came here on a foreign policy. Oops. I mean, all the silly question. And so in 84 and 88, we went from 400 delegates, 1,200 delegates. When that deal went down, we changed the rules from one take all to proportionality. We had the same rules in 84 when Rock ran. The reality is that Hillary won in California, Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey and New York. She's been the one that we changed the rules. It made it possible for Barack to win because we changed the rules. They thought he'd run a serious campaign, but by the time we got to California, they went back to Hillary. But it was too late. He got his proportion of those delegates. We've done a great job across the years. I want to thank you for talent and your commitment to come every Saturday, learn and teach. All of you who are here today are members of some board, right? Some precinct. I want all of you to become members of the Political Education Department, led by Betty Magnus. Stand up.
Give it up for Betty Magnus. Alderman David Moore is here. We are celebrating Memorial Day. Let's give it up for our men and women in military as we remember and reflect and recognize their service and sacrifice. There's a Southside Memorial Day parade, Alderman. Let's give it up for Alderman David Moore.
Thank you so much. Yesterday I was on my beloved Santita Jackson's show yesterday, and just as my brother, Congressman Jackson, just eloquently articulated the history of Memorial Day, and a lot of people don't know that, don't know it was started by these enslaved troops to memorialize the men that were killed on the battlefield in the Civil War. And that's why it's important that we support and recognize our veterans. When I became alderman back in 2015, and one of the first places I went to was my veterans home, and I asked them, how can I be of help to them? What are some of the needs that they need, that they needed? And one of the first things that they said is that we don't feel appreciated. We don't feel like we're recognized when they have the parade downtown. We don't feel a part of it. And can you give us our own parade in our neighborhoods on the South Side? And I made a commitment, and I don't make a lot of promises in politics. I always just say I'll do my best. But that was a promise that I made. And we got that off the ground. And this is our 8th year of doing the Southside Memorial Day Parade, where we laid the wreath. We got a beautiful garden, a memorial garden on 77th and Emerald, where we kick off the parade at. People line up on Halsted between 76th and 80th Street as the the parade comes down, where we have the Tuskegee Airmen represented, the triple nickels that people don't know about, airborne. We have the Buffalo Soldiers represented. All these people who played a role in history and making sure that this country was built up. And so join us on Memorial Day. At 10 o'clock is the ceremony, and the parade kicks off at 11, and we have our guest speaker that my friend Congressman Jackson probably know very well, Colonel Damon Arnold, who will be there speaking, a very decorated, highly decorated civilian. Right. And so please come out, and I hope to see you all there.
Give it up for Alderman David Moore. You know, we've got to know the history of Memorial Day. May 1st, 1865, 3,000 children led that parade to ensure that 260 soldiers had a proper burial.
Yes.
It started what America, the nation, embraced as Memorial Day. We've got 2 million African Americans who are in various branches of military who around the world put their lives on the line for this thing called democracy. Let's give it up for their lives, their sacrifice, and their commitment. What Alderman Moore has done here in Chicago is no small feat, to have a parade to honor and recognize and reflect on their service and recognize the fact that these are, in many instances, are unsung heroes. In just a moment, we're going to talk about the mental health impact of it. A recent study revealed, Congressman Jackson, that African American veterans are turned down 53% of the time when they go in for PTSD treatment. This is a phenomenal miscarriage of justice as it relates to the impact, as Reverend Jackson talks about, what happens to veterans when they come back home, particularly World War I, II, and Vietnam. They were treated with a higher degree of respect overseas, and then to come home after doing a tour of duty to be treated less than a full-fledged American. Thanks be to God for the work of Jesse Jackson.
Amen.
Globally, the global work of Reverend Jackson. And so when he talks about 84, 88, and shifting the scale of not just the Democratic Party, but the whole operation and the methodology of democracy to make this a more perfect union, it becomes your responsibility, my responsibility, to make sure that the work of Jesse Jackson continues. And it can happen with your contribution and your investment in what we're doing. You can go to www.rainbowpush.org and give right now, and not just become a member, but you can make a sizable contribution to make sure that this work goes on. As we speak, we have a delegation on their way to Nigeria representing Reverend Jesse Jackson at the inauguration of the new president of Nigeria. His work, his footprint, and fingerprint is all over the globe, and I don't know about you, I'm glad he's alive and well to keep the story alive. You know, mental health becomes important. I want Dr. Foster to come because this is Mental Health Month, Reverend Jackson, and the impact of mental health on our communities today is, as Congressman Jackson talks about, what is happening in Congress to cut back health care and help cut back access to health care and the quality of life resources that persons need. You know, when we look at communities that are over-policed and underrepresented, and look at and Dr. Foster can speak to this, one of the primary diagnoses of African Americans, believe it or not, is schizophrenia. And so we have high diagnosis and low accessibility to treatment and pharmaceuticals and new therapies to help treat and provide underserved communities, at-risk communities, and persons living on the margins the opportunity to regain and reshape their lives. Give it up for the Vice President of the Association of Mental Health, Dr. Foster.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Pavio Foster. I go by Dr. P. I'm the VP of Programs for the National Alliance of Mental Illness here in Chicago. About every day, 4.8 million Black Americans identify with mental illness and has been diagnosed with a mental illness. 4.8 million Black Americans.
4.8 million, with an M.
With an M.
With an M.
That's a lot of Black folks. But here's where the struggle comes in, is only 1 of 3 of those Black Americans are actually getting treatment. And so a lot of people may ask, why is that in the Black community? But I think, Congressman Jackson, you talked about it. There's a lot of socioeconomic disparities that are causing a lot of Black people to not get the support that they need. And so a big piece of this is that most folks are afraid because of this stigma that is tied to them if they identify and say, hey, I am living with mental illness. I tell people all the time that I'm able to talk about this story, I'm able to communicate about it, not just because this is the work that I do, but this is the life that I live. And so at the age of 19, I tried to commit suicide. And my mother traveled down to school. They put me on 24-hour watch because I was just overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do in that moment. And so I started counseling, I started therapy, and while people think that that is something that's extremely scary, therapist is beneficial. And so we have to make sure that we're communicating that to our Black people and in our Black communities. Some of those socioeconomic disparities are lack of health care. 10.6% in the year of 2020 of Black Americans did not have access to health care. And we're thinking about it in 2020, that was in the heart of the pandemic. That was a lot, and so folks didn't have access. So if you don't have access to health care, why would I be looking for a therapist? A lot of people are afraid to do it, right? We don't have the same access to education. We don't have the same access to health care. We don't have the same access to social areas and social, access areas. And so these are things that a lot of Black folks are just afraid to do. So one of the things is I go out and I talk to people and I say, well, how do we get Black folks to talk about their mental health? We have to start conversations like this. We start communicating about it, and if I started talking about it and you start talking about it, then maybe the community will then catch on and it will become a conversation that is easy. But there are some things that we have to stop doing in the Black community to erase this stigma that a lot of Black people are holding. The first thing is we have to stop making people feel like they're crazy. Right? The first thing we do is somebody say, oh, I'm feeling all of these different type of emotions. Oh, you acting real crazy. We have to remove that. And we have to look for ways that we support people. So I work for an organization that is NAMI Chicago that pulls all of that information, right, to try to eliminate the stigma that Black people are holding on to. Well, if I say that I'm sad or I'm depressed or I'm anxious about things, people are gonna think that I'm crazy. So we have to remove that. We have to learn different ways. As Black people, we take on a lot. We carry a lot, we walk around, we're taking care of people, we're going to the grocery store, we're going to work, take care of kids. Well, we carry a lot of different things, but oftentimes we forget to take care of ourselves. And so self-care is extremely important. It's extremely important for you to step back and say, how do I care about me? How do I take care of me? And if that is therapist, then by all means, go to therapy. I tell people all the time, and I just talked about this at church on Sunday, as I said, most Black communities, we go to church and then that's it. But it is okay to have Jesus and a therapist. That is all right to do. We're treating the whole person, not just half of the person. And so we want to make sure that we're doing those things, teaching our children healthy coping mechanisms. Healthy ones like, okay, how do we do breath work? How do you take deep breaths? How do we make sure that you're exercising to get some of that energy off? I got a 5-year-old, so I know what that means. He's up, down, all across, and I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna work this out a different way. Let's run. So learning healthy ways. We talk to them and help them to use their words, right? Instead of those actions, sometimes when they get mad, they may have a reaction and pushing things or kicking things. I need you to tell me how you're feeling. We have to learn to talk to our children, and we also have to learn to talk to each other. Instead of, most times we get angry because it's the easiest thing to do. It's easy for me to show you my anger versus showing you my vulnerability because I have no idea what you would do with my vulnerability. But we have to make sure that that is something that we're doing. there are a lot of high rates of black people who do get diagnosed with schizophrenia, who do get diagnosed with bipolarism and manic depression, and all of these different things come up, but we title it something different. And when we title it something different, then they don't get the support that they need. And we want to make sure that we keep having these conversations, we keep communicating about them, and I will keep saying we have to keep creating spaces like this where people will listen to us. Well, they will then take out, like they say in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I don't like that when it comes to mental health. What happens here, I need you to take it out and I need you to teach other people about it, and I want you to share that message for folks. That's what will help eliminate those stigmas and those barriers to mental health in the Black community. I will stick around if folks want to learn more about just NAMI Chicago just in general. Any other additional resources, especially if you work with young people, that is my passion. And if I can support in any type of way, I would love to do that. And just thank you so much for allowing me to have this space.
Give it up for Dr. Foster. You know, an alarming report came out, Dr. Foster, and maybe you want to comment on this. 1.6 million black people in the past 22 years. 1.6 million. 1.6 million have died because of the effects of racism in our culture. Racial profiling, driving while black, walking while black, housing discrimination, poverty, lack of access to quality of life resources. So when she talks about we go through a lot, when you walk into a store, you're profiled. You get in your car, you're profiled. Imagine young people this weekend who are with a family, a group of 6 or 10, and someone believes that's a gang. Imagine the stigma that you have to walk with as a returning citizen, that you could be pulled over and or arrested again for something that you've already served time for. You are a productive citizen, but you're walking around with this schism every day. Imagine if you are an addict, a person who has now reformed themselves, but you now can't get a job because of a felony that's blocking employment and or housing, which is now the new credit system. They're not just doing a credit check, they're doing a criminal check. So imagine the impact of that every day. And when she talks about titling, and you call it crazy, and you try to self-medicate versus self-care. This is a big deal. Thank you, Dr. Foster.
Absolutely, thank you.
And so we're going to make her information available on our website and our platforms, and as she's here at the close of our forum, please see her, and do not be shamed. Do not be embarrassed. Do not be your own worst enemy in getting the care that you need, because at the end of the day, nobody can care for you like you can care for yourself. One more time for Dr. Foster. Reverend Jackson.
Early in the broadcast next week, talk more as you did in the fellowship last week. Next week we're going to try to do a big thing. Police community form a covenant. We're scared of police. They're scared of us. We hide information from them, they hide information from us. So the police have a lot of baggage on the company. They were hired in slavery time, chase escaped slaves, bloodhound, all that stuff. Segregation police, right, to kick down people's doors without any kind of notice. So they got my father was wanted to be the first black policeman in Greenville. He could only arrest whites. Blacks couldn't arrest whites. Wouldn't accept the job. The first black policemen were brutal on other black people. Guy in Chicago named Two Gun Pete, right? About 7 black people he killed, and he was a hero. And we began to break that mess up in the 70s. Now we must deal with the fact that many blacks will not tell on a black who killed somebody, and we become a sanctuary for killers. Police won't tell on the guys who killed Laquan McDonald. And then they knew who did it, blue coat or flu. So the police are hiding information, and we're hiding information. A mutual distrust syndrome. They must admit they've done wrong. I think about Miss Foster, that name, Hill. We want to somehow bring the parents next week. Police chief, let's have a dialogue about that. Now, Ms. Foster, I want to tell you this. We need to use the word crazy a little more. Mental health don't quite get it. Somebody acting crazy. I was running in Greenville, South Carolina. You go to Columbia to the crazy house. And so, it wasn't the right word to use it, it's called a crazy house. Got broke out one weekend. And so he had on a suit and tie. The little other people walking down the street, and so he had in the Alvin's restaurant, reading the newspaper. So they didn't know who he was. The badge off, you know what I mean? So 3 ladies walked in, very fine, neatly dressed, bikini type situation. So they say, well, they got to look at us. Yeah, he's not looking at us. Paranoid. They moved, he moved his eyes, he moved. Ran and called him, they couldn't find this guy. He got up and boxed him in the corner. Looked at the fine woman and said, I got your tag. It was crazy. I mean, mentally off. You get the point? He said, I know you got that. Got your tag. So now, I want y'all to contribute today. I want you in a very different kind of way. A renewed commitment to the proposition. Next week we plan to have a lot of policemen here. These little gangbangers and thugs shooting up people. Gonna break it up. We might not having our rappers concert after the first day of the convention. There'd be more police than there'd be people. We ain't gonna cancel nothing because the gangbangers with it. Jeff Ford and them, they broke up, they're in jail now. So we have the power to break up madness, right? If you will make a commitment today to register for the convention, stand right now, you'll register for the convention today. $35, you're already registered, stand. You want to register for the convention, stand right now. All those who are members automatically registered. Stand. Register for the convention right now.
While you're doing that, Reverend, we have one more guest, Albert Alexander, who is a part of our Veteran Service Project. We featured him on our Saturday morning forum. Give it up for Reverend Jesse Jackson. We featured him on our Saturday morning forum. Providing services for veterans is so very critical for us today. And the homeless population has an enormous body of homeless veterans. Albert Alexander knows personally and up close in a very forensic way what it is to come home after serving a tour of duty. But then he's come and turned, Reverend Jackson, his pain into power. He has a phenomenal program called A Special Place for Veterans. Let's give it up for Mr. Albert Alexander. Talk a little bit about your experience and the service that you've made available. We featured it this morning on our Saturday morning forum on the Word Network, and he was introduced to us by Mrs. Floretta Strong Pulley. Let's give it up for Floretta. She's so supportive of our organization. Talk to us about A Special Place for Veterans.
Well, thank you for letting me be here, and good morning, everybody. Mr. Reverend Jesse Jackson. I never got a chance to meet you in person, so thank you. Nice to meet you. And well, I was a formerly homeless veteran. I was medically discharged, and I wanted to find a way where veterans can serve their country when they exit the military in a place where they wanted to, not where they had to, just to make ends meet. And so that's how A Special Place of Veterans became born. And so what we do is we act as a liaison for veteran families and those transitioning from military service to help them navigate civilian life in the areas of personal credit, business credit, entrepreneurship, and housing, okay? And we believe all of our programs that we have offers a holistic human health and healing. Because imagine if we're able to help you secure housing and we know, and you know as a veteran that that house is available for your family after you die, they still have it, that gives you a spiritual rest. And so that's what we want to do, that's what we're doing, and we're hosting our very first event in our building we just got on 4025 Southwestern. July 1st, we're having a Daddy's Day, Daddy's Barbecue and Mama's Mac and Cheese Cook-Off. So, so we're doing that as a fundraiser. July 1st, a Daddy's Barbecue and Mama's Mac and Cheese Cook-Off. Oh, 4025 Southwestern.
Albert, talk about, when we interviewed you, you talked about the difference in being in the military, in tour, and then coming home. Many African American veterans come back home expecting to be included into the culture, accepted, respected, and revered, and it's quite opposite their experience of racism, classism, etc. And particularly as it relates to gaining access to employment and housing, it becomes quite a different experience. Talk about that, because as we salute these servicemen and women, it's important that we work to heal them and make them a part of the holistic functionality of our communities.
Well, I do know, maybe some people may not realize that when you're getting military trained and trained for military life, you're getting like institutionalized. You're in a new, totally different culture. You're in a new language, and your process of thinking is changed. And then when you get out the military, like my children were born when I was active duty, so that's their form of thinking. So when we get out the military, we're catapulted into a place, all civilians of people that don't understand the way we think, a decision-making process, and there's no place where they can get help because kids go to school, the family members trying to go to work, and you try to fit into the community of people that don't understand just what you're saying by daily conversation. And we also know that you can't train a civilian and you can't untrain the veteran, so it's always up to the veteran to adapt and overcome. So it always falls on us to figure out what's going on, and that's what a lot of times breaks up the families, because the husband and wife looking at each other, the children looking at the parents, and no one have any answers. And so that's why we want to act as a liaison, and we say, imagine a community of people that you come live in after you get out the military, of people that understand what you're saying. You don't have to explain a whole lot of things. We can just say "whoa," and everybody understands what that means. Roger that. People understand what that means. Civilians don't. I've been checked a couple of times. You can't talk like that. We don't know what you're talking about. And then when we're doing job interviews, the names of job descriptions, I don't even know if I qualify for that job because I never heard of that. And I might be able to do it well, but don't know it. And then when I'm getting interviewed, I'm using terminology and jargon that I knew from the military. The civilians don't understand that. So that's how we perpetuate not getting employment. Even at the VA, I've traveled 15 years. And they want to give me an entry-level job mopping floors, and I did HR in the military for 12 years, and I couldn't get into HR. And so a lot of people are having that problem across the nation. And it doesn't matter how well you get off, how high your rank is, or whatever the case may be, or how much money you may have, we still have those cultural differences and problems. So it ain't really just about money only, because you could have a high ranking and be an officer or whatever the case may be and have a good retirement and save up, but you still got the same mentality that you catapulted into a place where people don't understand you. So that's why a special place of veterans comes in, to give that holistic human health and healing all around.
Let's give it up for Albert Alexander, Special Place for Veterans. You can find out more about him on our website, www.rainbowpush.org, or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Reverend Jackson?
Money time, y'all. We really need the help. This is saying our work. We were going into a convention. We didn't stop doing COVID. We kept on working. People needed service most of all during that time. Some of you are able to give $100 a day. I want you to do it now. We have a delegation in Nigeria this morning, right? Right now. We're going, I was to go. President called me to go for him. I couldn't go because Doctor said it's coming out with pneumonia. I should not travel that far this quick. I was going anyhow, y'all. My doctor put clamps on me. But here we are, and they're there. We'll be well represented at the meeting today. James Gomez and others are there. If you give $100, please stand. I need your help. Also, if you're a teacher, please stand. If you're a teacher. If you're a teacher, please stand.